person who coined this term, her name was Boss. She coined this term back in the early 70s when she was a grad student in the States working in a psychology department, trying to understand this aspect of grief. And it's a long story and I won't bore you with it, but she's still alive, she still practices, clinical psychologist in the States. But she coined this term, ambiguous loss. But then she talked about how do we help if we find ourselves in this, not by changing the person, but by helping us. And she talks about the idea of we need to build resilience in ourselves that allows us to deal with the now. And this is not a judgment, because believe me, I'm there. I've been there. But a lot of times when I work with clients in this experience, what I hear from them is, I just wish things were the way they were. I just wish we could go back. I wish I could have my mom back. I wish I could have my dad back. I just want it the way it was. And if we spend our time in that world, we're going to have a rough go. That doesn't mean we can't feel that. And I never am judgmental about that statement, believe me, because it's a true, honest statement, and there's nothing wrong with expressing it. But if we try to live in that and make that happen, then we're going to be in trouble. So here's how we need to look at this, how Boss talked about it. First of all, we need to find meaning in the circumstances that we're in now. So you think about the person that you care for, who loves, who has Alzheimer's or dementia. And if I asked you to say, in the previous life as it was, how did they give meaning to you? It wouldn't be hard to find words for that one, is it? Oh, they loved me, they raised me, they did all kinds of things for me, they were my partner, we did things. There's all kinds of ways that they provided meaning for your life. And I'm not about to forget that, believe me. We need to hold on to that. But the key is they can't give you that meaning now other than memory. And memory's great. I don't want you to lose that. But I'm saying to you that if you can't find meaning in the now, then we're going to have a hard time building resilience in you. So how do you find meaning when it seems so meaningless? What do you look for to find meaning? I can't answer that for you. But some days, meaning for me was going into my mother-in-law's room and she knew me. And she said my name. I thought, wow, that's a good day. Wow. Meaning sometimes is found in the ability of the person to find joy in something. That you take them outside and for a moment, you're watching them smile. I don't know what gives meaning. The ability to do a meaningful act in somebody's life where you see something positive. They're still here physically. And whether people say to me, well, you know what, they're here physically, but they're gone. I say, be careful with that one. Because the truth is, we are also known by our physical bodies. Part of who we are is our physical body, And so we're known that way. I know Ron, not just because, of his voice, but I know him as physically. When I see him, I know who he is. It's part of who he is. We can't separate it totally and say the person is not also the physical. So we're left now we've got the physical, but not the pieces we had hoped for that gave us meaning before and connection. But we still find meaning in this new field, this new way, this new life. We'll talk about that in a moment if you want. Secondly, she talks about adjusting mastery. In other words, what are you doing for yourself to help yourself know what it is that helps you stay grounded and gives you calm and peace when everything else is crazy? If I could say anything to you, honestly, from my heart, I would say, please be more compassionate with yourself. Find a way to give yourself a little bit of a break. You're doing the best you can. Is it enough? No. It'll never be enough. But when things get overwhelming and the frustration builds, and some of you are probably in a situation where you're not just looking after the person with Alzheimer's, etc. You're probably looking after other family members and kids or grandkids or whatever, and you've got responsibilities coming at you and you're trying to survive. What do you do that helps ground you, that gives you a sense of peace? Now, if you're like me, most of us never think about that until we have to. And I'm encouraging you just to find, what is it that grounds you? What is it that, when life seems overwhelming, what do you do to give yourself strength, to give yourself peace, to give yourself that sense of strength and courage, calmness? You need to find that. You need to ask yourself, if I don't know what that is, I need to spend some time thinking about that and practicing it. Thirdly, it's the reconstruction of identity. That song is, it's hard to be a mother to your mother, right? That's what we're doing, right? Sometimes your parents, we're treating them like little kids. And they say to me, and I've heard that so often, you know, I feel like this is really strange. I'm having to parent my parents. So who are you now? Are you the child or are you the parent? And we have to adjust identity in this thing. Life as it was pretty clear. We knew our place. We knew who we were. We knew how to act according to who we were. All of a sudden, life now, some things don't change. I'm still the child, I'm still the son, I'm still the parent, or the daughter, but I'm no longer able to act that way. I now have to change the way I am acting. And does that change my identity? Who am I? Yeah, we have to work that. We have to do that work. It's not just this. I mean, when I worked a lot with parents who had a child die, and I remember many occasions where a mother would come to me and say, you know, I've had an only child, and the only child died. Am I still a mother? What's the identity pieces that come up in grief and bereavement and loss? And ambiguous loss is no different. It's grief, and we're dealing with identity issues. Who am I now? And so you have to work that. But you don't work it according to how it was. You have to deal with it now. Fourthly, she talks, normalize ambivalence. This is great. Some days you feel like, okay, I got this. And then the next day you say, I don't think I can do this anymore. Probably not a day, probably a minute later. It just, that ambivalence goes back and forth. Okay, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. We've got it all down. And then a day later, the plan just blows up and we don't know what we're doing because mom or dad isn't cooperating. So we have to go over the whole thing again. So when she says normalize ambivalence, here's what we realize. Life now is not controlled the way we thought life was then. The truth is, none of us have control of life the way we think we do. But we don't have the control. So how do we deal with life when we're constantly dealing with this ambiguity of things? We're not sure, the ambivalence. How do I feel about it today? Well, some days I'm okay. I can say to my friend, yeah, my dad's got dementia. I go to see him every now and then. He knows me sometimes, but you know what? It's all great. He's happy. And then the next time you're talking to somebody, this is the worst life. My dad, who I loved, who knew me, who taught me how to do all this, he doesn't even know me half the time now. And that emotional roller coaster that we experience. So what she would say and what I would say, and this is not easy, how do we normalize that as best we can? How can we say, and this is where I'm telling you, you have to learn to be compassionate with yourself. It's okay, I'm having a rough day. All these crazy feelings, it's all right. I'll get through this. I'm not crazy, and I'm not a bad son, or I'm not a bad daughter, or I'm not a bad sibling. I'm doing the best I can. And then revisiting the attachment, which is part of the identity piece, actually. So how are you attached? Especially now if they're in care. So somebody else is looking after major pieces of their care. What is your role in that? How am I attached to them? What is our attachment piece? Now, you never lose being who you are. I want to make that very clear. You will always be connected and attached. But it's how that gets worked out that has to be different. And that goes hand in hand in the work I do with identity. And then finally, and this one I love, and this one's absolutely crucial. Can we find hope? And you're sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to look for if I'm hoping? What's hope look like for you? Well, it's not what it was in life as it was. Hope then was totally different. But we need to live with hope in some way in the experience we have now. So can you look for that? Can you look for it and say, okay, what is it that I can hope for? And you know, people used to say to me when I worked in palliative care and lots in hospital, hospice, people would say, do you believe in miracles? I say, yeah, I believe in miracles. I see them every day. I see somebody who's dying who can laugh for a moment. That's a miracle to me. I see somebody who's had everything taken away and they're laying in a bed and they can tell me what they're thankful for. That's a miracle to me. And you know what? If we keep our eyes open, we can find miracles. We can find things to hope for. They're not what the way it used to be. And so here again, if you're trying to recover life as it was, we're not going to do this well. But the challenge to accept life as it is involves this brain map change. And it's going to get frustrating and acute and difficult at times. But that's the journey. And we're all in it together. We're all doing it different, but we're all doing it. We're all living life in a way that we never thought we would live life. And we're having to learn that. So we're students. We're learning. Some days we do okay, and some days we do absolutely horrible at it. And I would say that's where you show the compassion to yourself and say, you know, today wasn't a good day, but tomorrow's a new day, and we'll see what tomorrow brings. Or you can ruminate on why today was such a bad day because it was nothing like it used to be. Today was not a good day, and today I didn't do the best I could have. But I'm not going to blame myself. This is hard work. And tomorrow, it's a new day. And we'll see what happens. Okay, I've talked too much. As I said, I could talk for hours on this piece, but I am so grateful for each one of you. And I am so aware, believe me, of how hard this journey is. But we don't get to choose it. And I'm thankful that you're there. I'm thankful that that person still has you, whether they know that all the time or not. And they don't know how it looks for you, but you're there. You show up. I want you to experience that sense of self-compassion and the acceptance that this is not something that's wrong with me. It's grief. It's ambiguous loss. It's brain mapping, and it takes a long time. I'm not a hunter, but people who hunt tell me that they look for the trails in the woods where the animals, the deer, whatever, they continually go to find them. And you can see these trails marked in the woods where the animals are constantly going. That's what brain mapping does. And it's hard to find a new trail. It's hard to cut a new trail through the bush, especially when we don't know what we're doing. But the old trail isn't possible anymore. That's why it's hard. That's why it's difficult. So be a little more compassionate, kind to yourself. But it's hard. Part of it is that identity. Part of it is that attachment. Part of it is what is life now.